Greetings from IGCP and Emerging News. I'm Dr. K.K. Agarwal. We know that vitamin D deficiency is very common worldwide and it affects persons of all ages from infants to adults. Recent research has shown that the effects of vitamin D are just not limited to bone health. It has extra skeletal effects too. Besides the bone problems of rickets in children and musculoskeletal pain in adults, many other health problems including cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer have been recently linked to insufficiency or deficiency of vitamin D. Prevention and treatment of vitamin D deficiency therefore becomes important not only for bone health but also for extraskeletal health. In this second module on treatment of vitamin D deficiency, we present to you various strategies to treat vitamin D deficiency in both infants and adults. This module has been divided into two parts. In the first part, we will discuss the treatment and management of vitamin D deficiency in infants. Enjoy the CMA.
As we are all aware, vitamin D deficiency or insufficiency is a widespread global problem. And India is actually one of the worst affected countries. Numerous studies have shown that more than 80% of urban Indians are actually vitamin D deficient or insufficient. In other words, they do have vitamin D in their blood, but it's not sufficient for their normal body processes. And therefore, this lack of vitamin D will compromise their bone health in older age. It is therefore quite important for all of us to know how to prevent and treat vitamin D deficiency. So let's look at what are the mechanisms by which we can do this. One basic mechanism of vitamin D synthesis is in the skin, and therefore it seems logical to say that one should just expose to the sun, and therefore a skin will make enough vitamin D, and there is so much sunshine in India. However, we realize that Indians do not like going into the sun. Also, we cover ourselves quite well. And the third factor is that we have pigmented skins, and pigmented skins actually make less vitamin D in the same time period as white skins do. So if you see this slide, it clearly shows there are 6 types of skin, and the classic white skin is a type 2 skin which has much less pigment and therefore makes more vitamin D, because melanin in the skin competes with the UV beta rays for vitamin D synthesis. And Indians who have brown skin or type 5 skin take longer periods of exposure and greater skin exposure to make the same amount of vitamin D. Therefore, while it seems very simplistic to say that you just go in the sun and that will suffice, most urban Indians, people like you and me, working in offices, working in hospitals, would find it very difficult to go into the sun between 11 and 3 p.m. and try and take off their shirt and make enough vitamin D. That's not easily going to be happen. So let's look at how we can actually address vitamin D deficiency. And we have not talked much about children in the other module. So let's really talk about children in detail today and then move on to adults. So does vitamin D deficiency exist in Indian children too? What are the consequences of this hypervitaminosis D? How should we diagnose, prevent and treat? And are there any risks of treatment in children? There is enough data to suggest that vitamin D deficiency exists in school children, in neonates, in adolescents. If you look at numerous studies from across India, in school children, clearly it has been shown that majority of them, in fact in some studies up to 90% of them, have suboptimal vitamin D levels. So imagine this is the growing age for our children. This is when we build our peak bone mass. Now at this stage of life, if we do not have adequate nutrition, if our children do not have adequate nutrition with vitamin D, they will achieve a lower peak bone mass than they are destined to achieve, simply because of poor nutrition. And because of this phenomenon, what happens is that later in life, even if they are not severely deficient, later in life, they become more prone to osteoporosis and bone fractures. So it is shocking actually that the vast majority of children growing up in this country, at least in urban environments and possibly also in rural environments partially, are seriously deficient or at least insufficient in vitamin D. So I think there are numerous studies on that. Not only that, let's go further. Let's look at children who are actually just born, neonates. And both pregnant women and their offspring have been shown to have clearly low circulating 25D levels. And I think that also is more or less a shame, because really if children are born with deficiency of vitamin D, their bone growth and development can be significantly compromised. So both the mother and the newborn have been shown to be deficient in vitamin D in India. In school children, these are studies from Delhi. Example to show you, more than 90% children in Delhi schools, and this includes both private and public schools, they actually had D levels below 20 nanograms, which actually tells us that 90% of them have D levels that are not optimum for their bone or skeletal health. What about pregnant women? Again, both urban and rural pregnant women have low vitamin D, and cord blood D levels, 25-hydroxy D levels, are low and match that of the mother. So at birth, the newborn, and during pregnancy, the fetus is not getting enough vitamin D. Children who are exclusively breastfed, children who are given only breastfeeding, which means infants, of course, they again have clearly low levels of D. Now, this is important to understand, because usually we conclude that breast milk contains everything that is required for a newborn. But actually, if the mother is deficient in vitamin D, the breast milk is also deficient in vitamin D. And therefore, neonates who are breastfed actually, or totally breastfed, they would not get enough D levels. So why are we worried about vitamin D in children? Let's look at the more gross forms of disease which many of you are aware of. Obviously, in children, deficiency of vitamin D produces rickets. And as you can see, this 8-year-old girl with severe rickets, having had surgery, look at the fraying of the epiphysis, look at the x-rays, look at the bowing of the legs. This is a classic rickets picture that we are used to seeing. It has become a little less common, maybe, but no one is really sure. So this is the overt form of vitamin D deficiency. And what I was referring to also was the subclinical, widely prevalent form. All children with low vitamin D will not develop rickets. Some of them will. But when it happens, it is pretty bad. And it's not just bones. It's very well known that children with rickets may have frequent respiratory infections. They may have more of bronchial asthma, wheezing. It could be chest deformity, muscle weakness, or actually ciliary dysfunction that is causing these things. And it is also thought that, and we'll discuss that briefly, is that vitamin D deficiency may actually make them more prone to infections, more prone to autoimmune disorders. So it's a multitude of things, but the conclusively proven things are that skeletal problems because of rickets per se are enough to cause significant respiratory problems in children with rickets. Let's look at this case, a 15-day term breastfed neonate, otherwise normal, presents with seizures. You get a call that the child presented with seizures. They did a calcium phosphorus and they found a calcium of 5.5 and a phosphorus of 8, which is low calcium, high phosphorus. So what are the diagnostic possibilities in this? When you have a low phosphorus, high calcium, you classically think of hypoparathyroidism. But this case doesn't have that. This case has hypocalcemic seizures and even hyperphosphatemia, which is occurring in the setting of severe vitamin D deficiency. So when there is severe vitamin D deficiency, you may get a low calcium, you will get a high PTH, and because of the low calcium, you might actually get seizures or other serious consequences of hypocalcemia. And in this particular study, they profiled 60 infants with hypocalcemic seizures and versus 60 healthy infants, and 90% of those who had seizures had hypovitaminosis D. Now, there's one point left here. What about the phosphorus? Classically, in vitamin D deficiency, phosphorus should be low. But in infants, sometimes phosphate can be high. And therefore, phosphate alone is not a reason to rule out vitamin D deficiency as a cause of hypocalcemia in infants and newborns. And I think that's really important. Another clinical setting, a 2.5-year-old girl presented with cardiac failure in the pediatric cardiology unit, found to have dilated cardiomyopathy. Look at the X-ray here. Found to have severe hypocalcemia, really low vitamin D, 10 nanomoles equal to about 4 nanograms per mil. So really low vitamin D in mother as well as in infant. And the interesting part in this patient was that when we treated with calcium and vitamin D, corrected the serum calcium levels, corrected the vitamin D levels, there was complete reversal of her cardiac condition. And therefore, in infants presenting with cardiomyopathy, congestive heart failure of unclear etiology, always think of hypocalcemia. And remember that in India, the commonest cause of hypocalcemia is vitamin D and calcium deficiency. Let's go a little older. Let's look at this 16-year-old boy who presented with progressive, painful lower limb weakness and short stature. So short in height, progressive muscle weakness. Not really thin, in fact little overweight. And the bone scan that was done because of his, before he reached us actually, showed marked increase in uptake, a metabolic super scan, which shows so many pseudo fractures in the ribs, as you can see on the slide. And quite clearly, this is related to vitamin D deficiency. And if you look at the ramus, you find a fracture, a pseudo fracture in the left pubic ramus that is marked out by an arrow here. So what I'm saying is you're seeing diffuse skeletal changes of hypermetabolism and multiple pseudo fractures in the ribs and so many other parts of the body, and a classic pseudo fracture in left pubic ramus, because this boy is in the cusp between rickets and osteomalacia. So he's growing, he's 16 years old. How should we protect our children from vitamin D deficiency? We don't know the exact time they need to be exposed, but yes, sunlight exposure is really important. Traditional ways of massaging children, exposing them to the sun are really, really good ways to prevent rickets in our children. But you don't leave them for too long. And remember, very small children, you got to be careful because their body homeostasis is not that great and there can be a risk of hyperthermia. As you know, the sun can be very strong in India. Food fortification is still just about taking off in India in a couple of states, and that may be another way to improve. There may be elective availability of vitamin D fortified milk, and that will also help our children. We must supplement mothers. And we must supplement infants and children separately. So one is during pregnancy protecting mothers, during lactation protecting mothers, and some of that will transmit to the child or infant, but also supplementing infants and children separately. In this very important study from Lucknow, they actually showed that supplementing vitamin D in pregnancy had a positive outcome on fetal anthropometric measurements. So anthropometry of the fetus was improved if the mother was given vitamin D in pregnancy. And in this case, for example, 4 sachets of 60,000 each given through the pregnancy, one in each trimester and one towards the end, actually helped in improving the D levels. And not just that, also seemed to have some impact on the anthropometry as such, which means that the head circumference and other measures of these children were better than those of those who were deficient. If you give enough vitamin D to lactating mothers, this clearly shows, an American study, adequate vitamin D supplementation in lactating mothers improves status in infants. So actually what you're doing is you are helping 2 lives by treating the mother. So if we give adequate, but not overdose of course, adequate vitamin D in pregnancy, we will not only improve the maternal health, but we will also improve the health of the newborn, because the D levels correlate directly with the maternal D levels. What should we do with infants? Ideally, we believe that all breastfed infants and other infants who are not consuming 1 liter of vitamin D fortified milk, which is very unusual in this country, they should receive 400 IU of vitamin D as a supplement daily. And I think that's important. It should be started early. You may need a little higher dose in children who are in preterm, those who have dark skin, and during winter, and you may need 400 to 800 IU per day. And that is the recommendation of the American Academy of Pediatrics. This upper limit suggested by the US Endocrine Society is 1000 IU per day. In older children, and moving away from infants and neonates, the recommended dietary allowance is 600 to 1000 units per day, but there is a whole bunch of children who require more than that. Who are those? These are children on numerous other medications. If the child is an epileptic, almost all anticonvulsants enhance vitamin D metabolism and increase the requirement of vitamin D, and therefore would require vitamin D supplementation in higher doses. Tuberculosis is very common in this country, and actually if you use anti-tubercular medication, you will again enhance the breakdown of vitamin D. So children who are on or even adults who are on anti-epileptics or anti-tubercular, they require definite higher doses of vitamin D supplements. Antiretroviral in case of HIV, children who are on steroids for some reason, patients with liver disease, patients with malabsorption, they require roughly 3 times of what is recommended. So easily 2 to 3,000 units a day is what is recommended for them. So supposing we have proven vitamin D deficiency and we want to really manage it in infancy. So we say that if you have clearly vitamin D deficiency, below 6 months the dose is 3000 IU per day, 6 to 12 months the dose is 6000 IU per day. This is for treating, right? This is not a supplementation, this is not a general population recommendation. But if you have vitamin D deficiency in children below 6 months, 3000 IU per day, and 6 to 12 months, 6000 IU per day. So basically you have to dose them according to the age at which they are. It's also said in India, for example, below 1 month even 1000 is enough, and some people have said from 1 to 12 months you can go up to 5000. So we are in that zone somewhere. I would say you should treat them, very small children, like within 1 month of delivery, maybe with 1000, but anyone above that 3000 IU per day at least. And then if you go further ahead above 6 months, you easily move to 3 to 5000 IU per day. That's the requirement. You give this therapy for 8 to 12 weeks. Use simple cholecalciferol or D3. No need to use activated metabolites. No use to go for fancy stuff. Cheap cholecalciferol, and where after you've given this 8 to 12 week dosage, you maintain at a dose of 400 to 800 units per day. If you have frank rickets, you will give up to 10,000 IU of vitamin D per day, which comes to almost 60,000 per week. Again, 1 sachet or 1 pill containing 60,000 IU is what you will need. Again, you will give this for 8 to 12 weeks and then maintain them somewhere between 400 to 1000 units per day. So this is important. Treating rickets, this is the protocol. First 8 to 12 weeks intensive therapy, then depending on the biochemical, radiological parameters, you move to maintenance doses. There's also this thing about STAS therapy, which is very large doses of vitamin D given once because of fears of compliance, children reaching the hospital from remote areas, where you give a single high dose of 1 to 6 lakh units depending on the age of the child, and a single dose, and that corrects rickets very well. But it has to be a single dose. The problem that is happening in our country, both in children and in adults, that physicians are tending to overcorrect vitamin D deficiency, which means that they are actually looking at giving multiple intramuscular shots, which I think is absolutely dangerous. because the amount contained in intramuscular preparations is very, very high. Look at what we are recommending. We are recommending 60,000 units at the max per week. And what does the injection contain? The injection contains 6 lakh units per injection. That is 10 times the dose. And we are seeing an increasing number of cases of vitamin D toxicity because of overuse of vitamin D supplements. So I think we need to be very, very careful what we are using where, and we should use, if we go for injectable STOS therapy as we call it, should be given just once, and the patient should be called back after several months. Of course, you need to monitor these patients. You need to monitor their calcium, phosphorus, alkaline phosphatase, PTH, do their x-rays. You can see signs of healing rickets with wide band of calcification in this x-ray. And it may take a long time to correct severe bone deformities, even up to 2 to 3 years. Yes, there is risk of toxicity always if you overdo things. There is a huge margin of safety in vitamin D. But the problem is that either physicians or patients are going overboard sometimes. And therefore people are using more vitamin D 10 times, 20 times more than what is recommended. So I ask you, if you're going to do that, how do you expect that the child will be safe? Obviously, if you're using a drug or even a vitamin which is 10 times, 20 times its recommended dose, you will get into trouble. So therefore, it's important not to get into that trap. Use the correct amount of doses as we discussed. If you do land up with a patient who has been given vitamin D elsewhere and has come to you with hypercalcemia, it can be a serious crisis. Not just in children, in adults too. Hypercalcemic toxicity because of hypervitaminosis D is becoming increasingly common because of indiscriminate use of vitamin D by physicians, surgeons and the like. What happens is that patient goes to one doctor and who sees the patient is vitamin D deficient, prescribes something, goes to another one, he prescribes something else, third one also prescribes, and patient, just yesterday I saw a patient who was taking 3 forms of vitamin D. A 16-year-old boy, 3 forms of vitamin D together. Now, I don't know what we are doing. So it is important to understand that vitamin D deficiency is common. It is common in Indian children. It needs to be treated, but with appropriate doses, which are usually oral doses that we have already discussed. If one does get into a crisis, then of course you have to manage on the principles of hypercalcemia by hospitalization, hydration, IV fluids, diuresis if required, maybe use of steroids sometimes, and sometimes even bisphosphonates. So to conclude one part of the talk, that is vitamin D deficiency is common in Indian children. It's an important cause of late onset hypocalcemic seizures and even cardiac conditions like dilated cardiomyopathy. Supplementation is necessary for everybody, more or less, who is at risk, which we already discussed. And large and repeated administration of the wrong doses can lead to vitamin D toxicity.